Alright, let's go inside.
Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about spindle gouges and also showing you how to do a few of the cuts, and one of the cuts you may not have seen. You might ask, what is a spindle gouge? Well, a spindle gouge is for doing spindle work. I know, a bit of a silly question. The better question would be, what is spindle work? Well, spindle work is wood that is got the grain in line with the axis of the lathe. So basically end grain work. So all the grains going this way. As you can see, this is a branch. So that would basically mean anything like tool handles, chair legs, stair spindles, you know, the runners. A bolt opener, this handle would be spindle work. Also got doorknobs, that would be spindle work. So there's quite a lot to spindle work, really. And a spindle gouge is basically defined as having a U-shaped flute with a fingernail style grind. Some have a more of a finger style grind than others, as I'll show you. And the main reason I'm doing this video is because my brother bought me a good present for my birthday, which is this spindle gouge here. This is a 1/2 inch or a 13mm. And one of the main differences between a spindle gouge and a bowl gouge is the size. And it's not the flute size either. These are both 1/2 inch. So they're the same width. If I turn them on their side, you can see the bowl gouge is way thicker. It also has a lot longer handle, and normally the metal is a lot longer. This would have been about there when it was new. That's so you can get right in a bowl and do it. But with spindle work, you're generally working very close to the tool rest. You know, that's probably the maximum you'd ever go off the tool rest on spindle work. But on bowl gouges, you could be way out here, maybe. Spindle gouges, they're mainly used for detail work on spindle work, on end grain, for making coves, beads, and also cleaning up any flush cuts. You can also use them for hollowing. I'll show you that later on. And the main difference between a spindle gouge and a spindle roughing gouge isn't the size, even though that's one of the main differences, is that the fact that you haven't swept back these corners at all. This is 90 degrees to the surface here, whereas if you look at the spindle gouge, you can see it's swept back a lot more. This angle back here. So that just means basically you can get into corners without this wing catching. As you can see here, there's no wing, and there's a wing here. So if you were going in, the other side would catch this and you'd get a nasty catch. Even though you can use roughing gouges to do coves and some things, it's not ideal at all. I wouldn't recommend it. So I think I'm going to go over to the grinder now, and I'm going to show you guys the two methods that I already know of for sharpening spindle gouges. One of them is using a Wolverine jig, or one-way jig sort of style, and the other way is freehand. So we'll go over there now. Here at the grinder, so first things first, I've just got a CBN wheel here. It's 180 grit from Wood Turner Wonders, and the jig I'm going to be using just comes in underneath this. This little water table comes out, and I have a little jig under there, just a knob, and it comes in and out, and this is just a little stop block for the back of this jig. Man, some people do sell these. It's like One Way and Wolverine, and then I think there's a couple other jigs that are made, but I made my own. So I just have a mark here on this piece of wood here, and I just go up to it, and I can feel where the previous dent is with the bolt, and I just pull it forward slightly and then just tighten it down. And then the back of the jig just sits in those little notches. So this top one here I've got for my bowl gouge, and it also does the relief angle, this little relief secondary bevel, whatever you want to call it, on the back of the gouge. That just gives you more clearance when you're coming in. But that bottom one is what I use, and generally for spindle gouges you have them between a 30 degree and a 45 degree angle. 40 degrees is probably the most common, and that's this angle, you know, this one here, this angle, so that's the straight, this angle here. So you're looking at between 30 and 45. Most common choice is probably about 40 degrees, but a lower angle provides a sharper edge. It won't last as long though, and it's better for more detail work, getting into fine coves and all that. Some people might put a steeper angle on it just so that the angle retention stays longer. And also on spindle gouges, these are generally steeper than a spindle gouge. They're normally about 50 degrees, 45, 50 degrees. Some people will do 60. So yeah, on this spindle gouge I have a 30 degree. This one here, I think it's more about a 40. So a detail gouge, which this one sort of is, because I've ground it to a 30 degree angle, has a more delicate edge, but it is good for intricate work and fine details like beads and coves. And a general spindle gouge has about a 40 degree angle, and this is more suited for roughing and shaping. And like I said before, the roughing gouge is normally about 45 or 50 degrees. So that's it for the angles on the front. So like I said, I got 30 degrees on this one. We're about forward here on this one. It's not quite accurate because this is the freehand one, and this is the one I've done with the jig. So like I say, they start off like this when you get them out of the packet, but those wings need to come back, and this is the whole point of the jig, or the freehand shaft. So to put it in the jig, you just slide it in there. And then up here I have a little hole in a block. I think that's set to 15 millimeters, I think. And just tighten that up. And that's now set, that distance. So now you just use the end of this point here, put it in that notch, and now you can lay it on the stone. And you just do this backwards and forwards until you end up with a nice point. And then you will need to straighten these edges up, because it will be quite dished when you start, but I like a bit more of a pointed. That also makes you easier to get into the bottom of the cove without the top wing touching. If you have more of a curve on it, that top wing is more likely to catch, and you can't get quite as sharp as a point. So I think I'll just show you how accurate all that jigs and settings are. I'm just going to put some vivid on here, and it should only really move it from the top because that bottom's a different angle. So there you go, you can see my setting isn't too bad. So yeah, this jig's probably the easiest way to do it, but it does take a bit of setting up to do. And it does take a while when you first get a tool to cut back those wings and grind it back. So there you go, that's the point there. So you can see it's got more of a radius there than a bowl gouge does. A bowl gouge, you generally have that straight. Alright, I'll show you the freehand method now. Just going to show you on this little one here. Now the freehand method is a lot harder to do, but it can be a lot quicker. So basically what you do is you put the tool on the side here, at the top, and then you come down and you rotate the tool to the middle, and you rotate this up, and then you come back up to the other side and do the opposite. Just like that, just doing these. And that gives you the same effect as using that jig. Like I say, it's a bit more tricky to do it freehand than using the jig, and you sort of got to keep track of that edge there because you can quite easily round it over. Alright, that's enough of the sharpening. I'll go over it and we'll make some wood shavings now. So we're back here at the lathe with this piece of wood on the lathe. This is a piece of magnolia just from a tree that we had trimmed. And normally what you'd do is you'd use a spindle roughing gouge to rough this down. And the main way you would do that is you just put it on the tool rest. And this one's already got a set angle. So you put it on there and you just go sideways with it. Or you can go in and make a cut, and a cut and do it. You can do this with a spindle gouge, but it is going to blunt your gouge because it is at a finer angle than the roughing gouge, even though you can do this work with the spindle gouge. So I think I'm just going to do the roughing work with the roughing gouge first, and then I'll show you the cuts. Alright, so now I've got the main roughing done with the roughing gouge. You can see it takes a lot of material very quickly. See the size of that. It pretty much takes effect of the peeling cut, which is normally a cut done by a parting tool or a skew. So basically it's just a flat edge coming in and it's literally peeling the wood like it says. One of the things is the tool rest height. It's very dependent on the size of your spindle. Normally spindles are quite small, but you can actually have the tool rest quite a lot higher than you normally would if it was a bowl or anything like that. It just means your tool handle is more level rather than very pointed up. You can have the tool rest lower, but you got to drop your handle. So the first cut I'm going to show you is a planing cut, or some people might call this a shear cut. So basically what you're doing is you're putting the tool on the tool rest first, so you're anchoring, and then you're rubbing your bevel, and then you're engaging the tool. So there's basically 3 steps there: tool rest, bevel, and then cut. So you come in with the gouge sort of closed off like this on the tool rest, rub, and then you can just rotate the tool up until it starts to cut. And you want to use, if you're going towards the left, you want to use the left side, and if you're going towards the right, you want to point towards the right and use the right side. So generally I have this on about 45 degrees on the tool rest. So this way I have this about 45 from the center, put it on there, and then I just come in until I can find the edge, and then you can come along, and then using that bevel you just ride along into a planing cut. So I don't know if you guys can really tell, but that's the planing cut there. A lot smoother than just the roughing cuts, the peeling cut. So like you saw there, I just came on and you start about 45, so it's closed off, and then you come back up, and you want to keep the tip of the tool in the direction you're going. So you don't want to come backwards like this and pull the tool, because that's going to end up rolling the tool and pulling it down. So you want to come slightly this way if you're going like there, and the opposite. So you don't. So come over slightly. Like I say, if you have it backwards and you're trying to go this way, it's just going to dig in and it's going to pull the tool up, the tool handle. So another cut you might use is you might use sort of a parting cut, or just to clean up the end, and that's similar to a cove. You come in with the tool completely closed off and you spin it up a little bit, and this back bevel here is rubbing the wall of whatever you're trying to cut. Just like that. I think I'll do a close-up so you guys can see. See, that's basically the essence of most of the cuts with the spindle gouge. So you come in and you just come over, we're using the bottom of the flute, and we're pushing against the wood, and then you just roll up until it starts cutting, and you just come in. Alright, and now beads and coves are basically the same thing, except you're starting over and you're rotating the tool. Sorry about that noise, there's a bit of a hole in there, so that's why it's hitting every time it goes around. So yeah, that's how you do a bead, is you just come in and you just roll the tool over, and then same on the other side and you'll get a... And another versatile cut is the V cut. It's just going like this. So that's how you basically get your coves, or your beads, and you just round these over if you want to make a bead. You just put the tool on there and you come and you're rotating it over as you're pushing it in. And just like that. So you saw that? It's basically the same cut the whole time, except how you're rotating this. So you come in, and as you're pushing forward, you're rotating over. And one of the final cuts is the shear cut, and that's basically using this like a scraper almost, set backwards. So you have the tool sort of upside down, or very close to it, and you just come along and you're pulling it. This is when you're pulling it backwards. You shouldn't do this with the flute open, just when it's closed like this. And you just come along and do a shear cut. That will make a very nice finish if you can't get it with the planing cut. Just like that, and you get a very nice finish like that. Alright, I might show you the party trick sort of spindle gouges, and that's hollowing. So I'll bring you around here. So I've got you around here for the end grain hollowing, using the spindle gouge. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to have the tool rest on halfway of where the cutting point's going to be, so you stay on the centre. Now you can just drill a hole using a spindle gouge just by pushing it in, and it will drill it just like a drill bit. But when it comes to the end grain hollowing, you're actually going to be using the back edge, this top edge here, and you're going to be rubbing the back bevel here on this corner here. So once you've got a little hole there, you're actually using that as a fulcrum to twisting motion, and you're also pushing up and going backwards. So there's sort of three sort of motions you're doing. You're sort of so hopefully you got a good view of that. It's a little bit jiggly because I'm quite far out from the tool rest here, from the headstock. But as I'm going in, as you can see, I'm fulcruming off this edge here and using the back of the, and you can just come backwards and forwards, and as you come, release the tool this way, it will start cutting, and it will close it off if you go this way. So you just come in, and I find it easiest to ride it backwards and forwards, because it's always when you make contact that ugly things happen. And the other thing is you don't want to get this too thin because it can explode when you're coming out. As you can see, it is quite a tricky technique to get a hold of. I'm not that good at it, but I can do it. And it's very good for removing all that end grain, and you still get a reasonable finish. But there are probably better tools for that job. Alright guys, that's about all for this video. Just a bit of a shorter one. I was just doing that because, like I said, my brother got me a nice new gouge here. So I thought I'd show it off a little bit. And if you hadn't seen that end grain hollowing before with the spindle gouge, there you go. And if you made it this far through the video, thanks for watching. And until next time, see you later.